Now, this illustration deals with enclosures for electrical installations in accordance with 110.31 of the code. Now, notice we have a substation illustrated. Now, the main thing that has to be done here, who owns it? Is it a utility substation that would fall under, I believe it's Chapter 1 of the National Electrical Safety Code? Or it is a customer-owned transformer that would fall in some of the rules of 250-184 and 250.194, if my memory serves me correctly, in the National Electrical Code, where we have over 1,000 volts present on that primary or secondary. Now, notice that primary is going to be a high voltage. It may be 4160, 2400. It may be 13,800, maybe 13,200, 12,470, maybe 15 kV. But notice the thing that takes place here, and I'm going to cover a couple, 2 or 3 things with you. But notice you would have a plaque there by the door, and it would say danger, high voltage, keep out. It would be at the front, the sides, and at the back. And it's usually set up by Z535, Z is in zebra, Z535.4 is the standard that we would use for labeling. And notice that if you, for example, that label would have an orange color to it, telling you with a warning. And once you walked in, then those high voltage terminations on that primary, notice that if you could reach up and touch them, then you'd have to have a little fence around those, and that fence would have a gate with a label that was red, danger. Now, we know those warnings are recommended to us in Z535.4. Now, look at it. Let's look at it this way. You enter into that gate, and those transformers are set up on pedestals, and usually what they do is they'll use a drainage metal type tubing or that you would use for drainage underneath the highway and so forth. And they would set that down, fill it full of concrete, so it's really strong and substantially strong, and they would set those transformers on top of that, and they would have the clearance rules that would meet the National Electrical Safety Code, Table 124-1. And then that label at the gate would be a red, dangerous label, danger, keep out. Because once you entered into the substation, the high voltage terminals there would be naturally above the height, so when you walked in, you couldn't reach up and touch them. So they would have the height clearance required by the National Electrical Safety Code. And you know, when you get into utility-owned substation, it's the National Electrical Safety Code. But if it's customer-owned, then we do know that we are referred, in some cases, to the National Electrical Safety Code for search clearances. Now, what we're trying to illustrate here now, your fence is only, say, 6 foot. But we need it 7 foot, as the code requires in NEC 110.31, because it's the owner of the facility. They also own this substation. So you could use 3 strands of barbed wire and get it up to 3 foot. Now, look at the NEC fact. This rule has only been in the NEC since 1993, but it's been in the National Electrical Safety Code for a long time. Why? Because usually a substation was owned by the utility. Not so anymore. Many facilities own their own substation. They will place their switchgear in the substation, either in a weatherproof enclosure or in a design-built room for it with air conditioning, cooling, because they have sensitive electronic equipment mounted in that particular room with service equipment. And then it's feeders going up to each individual facility, which provides a lot of flexibility for the user. If we have the main of the feeder in the substation in a switchgear, then we would look at 225.32 exception 1 and follow the rules, and it looks like with that we could have as many mains as we wanted in the switchgear at the facility if there wasn't an ordinance or another area in the code that would override that exception and only allowed 6. So keep this in mind, that 110.31 of the NEC is showing 3 barbed wires that would extend a 6-foot fence to a 7-foot fence to guard the energized components of the equipment inside the substation and keep unqualified people from entering into that substation and accidentally getting maybe hurt real bad, and in some cases, maybe the victim would even be killed. So that's what this section is all about, to guard those energized components in accordance with NEC 110.31.